live look outside of the courthouse here in Greenbelt, Maryland, as we could potentially see an indictment here for John Bolton. That is President Trump's former U.S. national security advisor. The Justice Department expected to ask that grand jury to indict him. Now, that is according to Reuters and other various news outlets. The possible indictment comes after court documents that were made public last month revealed that Bolton was under federal investigation for potential mishandling of classified information. Right now, I do want to discuss the potential here, what we could see happen. Let's bring in Neama Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Thank you so much, Neama, as always, for being here with us.
Thanks, Josh. Glad to be on today.
All right, so if we are talking about the potential indictment here of John Bolton, it sounds as though we're not totally sure on what charges he could be indicted for. But based on your experience, what could we see happen here?
Josh, I have a pretty good guess, and obviously nothing's happened yet. Don't want to be presumptuous, but I fully expect John Bolton to be indicted. There's so much smoke coming out of D.C. and Maryland, and these are what I expect the charges to be. I expect to see a violation of the Espionage Act for intentionally retaining classified documents, and depending on what he told investigators and law enforcement, potentially false statements and potentially obstruction of justice. So the Espionage Act carries a potential 10-year sentence, and the other counts 5-year sentences in federal prison.
When we talk about this situation in general, how would you say that grand jury and the DOJ in general go about making sure that they are remaining neutral? Because we're talking about a politically charged situation. So how do they ensure that this is neutral and that it's not politically based?
Josh, I'm smiling. It should be neutral, but I think that ship has sailed. And, on both sides, I think both Republicans and Democrats have reasons to question our system of justice. And it's unfortunate, but this is what we're dealing with. So I'll talk about historically how the DOJ has worked and how things are moving along now. So historically, these types of political prosecutions, they had to be decided in D.C. You can't have a local U.S. attorney or assistant U.S. attorney like myself making these decisions. You need to get the approval of the mothership. We call it main justice in D.C. But in this particular case, we know that the President of the United States and Pam Bondi have both given their blessing to this investigation and likely prosecution. In fact, this investigation started during the first Trump administration, and then when Biden was elected, he really pulled the plug on it. So this is something that the DOJ has been looking into for quite some time. Obviously, Bolton's Maryland home was raided. His D.C. office was raided. So it really wasn't a matter of if, but a matter of when. When you have the President of the United States going on social media, talking about James Comey, talking about Letitia James, talking about John Bolton, also talking about Lisa Cook and Adam Schiff, I fully expect to see charges for Bolton, Schiff, and Cook as well.
What role would you say that the grand juries play in sensitive cases involving classified documents, national security? More than just maybe fact gathering, do they serve a legalizing, legitimizing purpose in any way?
Well, we know the grand jury would indict a proverbial ham sandwich. And for folks that haven't been before the grand jury, it's a secret proceeding. Now, obviously, there's a lot of leaks coming out in this particular case, which is not common. But the grand jurors, there's usually 23 of them, and they hear a one-sided account of the evidence. So a prosecutor like myself will go in there and they'll put on their witnesses, and there's a court reporter, but there's no defense attorney there. And the standard is very low. It's just probable cause, and they need just a bare majority. So 12 of those 23 grand jurors to return an indictment or a true bill. So it's very easy to get a grand jury indictment. In fact, it's very rare not to get an indictment. So in the Comey case, for instance, when Lindsay Halligan presented her first criminal case to a grand jury and was unable to get an indictment on one of the counts related to Hillary Clinton, that was very surprising. So setting aside the strength of the evidence in this case, Josh, I would be shocked if prosecutors in Maryland can't get a grand jury indictment.
And we are taking a look there, a live look outside of the courthouse as we wait to see what happens. You can even see there's a podium set up with microphones because we likely will get comments if the indictment does come down. A lot of what ifs, but as you said, you could, and I want to make sure I get this right, indict a ham sandwich. Is that the saying that I've heard a lot over the past several years?
Josh, very easy to get a grand jury indictment. I'm not saying the charges are going to stick because we know that Bolton is going to defend this case, and he's likely going to hire Abby Lowell, a very prominent criminal defense attorney. He represented Hunter Biden. He's actually representing Letitia James in her bank fraud case, and he has been representing Bolton. So expect to see him file motions to dismiss for selective prosecution. Obviously, Bolton has been a pretty high-profile critic of the president, and expect him to argue that he is being targeted because of his political speech. I don't think that motion will win. It rarely does. President Trump raised a similar motion. Hunter Biden, through Lowell, raised that same motion as well, and they were both unsuccessful.
All right. What do we need to be watching for here in the coming hours and days as all of this continues to play out?
What we should expect is the grand jury to return an indictment. I don't think Bolton will be arrested. Like Comey, he'll be able to appear in court at the arraignment, and he's going to plead not guilty. So we talked about one of the motions that the defense is going to raise, and they're also going to challenge this case on the merits. So how are they going to do so? Well, first, they're going to argue that there was no leak or unlawful retention of classified material. With respect to the leak, they'll argue that the memoir was pre-cleared by the government. And we're talking about the memoir that Bolton released in June of 2020. Expect a statute of limitations defense because 5 years has passed since that book has come out. Of course, the government will say that statute keeps running because he's maintained the documents. So importantly, when it comes to this statute, and we saw this in the President Trump classified documents case, and also the President Biden classified documents investigation, as well as Hillary Clinton's use of private email. The offense has to be intentional. So that means you have to know that you have the classified documents and intend to keep them. So it's a higher standard than some other types of cases. So for instance, when it came to President Biden, the special counsel in that case said there were some classified documents that were retained, but they were done so negligently. It was a well-meaning old man. So in that particular case, that's why Biden wasn't prosecuted. So even if documents were retained, but they were done so inadvertently, that's not enough to get a conviction in a case like this.
Neama Rahmani, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Anything we missed? Anything you want to make sure to add here before I let you go?
No, I think that's it. I would just, again, expect to see those bank fraud, mortgage fraud charges for Schiff and Cook in the coming days and weeks as well.
All right. I'm sure we'll keep in touch and talk more about that if and when it does happen. Thank you again.
Thanks, Josh. Talk soon.